We have Erik Hoff with St. Patrick Lake Longbows. Erik designs a full range of longbows from full R&D to ASLs. And he's agreed to come on the show and walk us through his design behind each one, and we can kind of go through the metrics together. Thanks for coming on, Erik. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
You want to give us we'll just jump right into the outline we have. Do you want to give us your background and what made you step into the Bowyer space? And we'll go from there, and I'm sure it'll just unfold.
Sure. So quite a few years ago, I grew up hunting with a compound. And quite a few years ago, I was actually at a store to purchase a new compound. In shooting these bows, I was shooting without sights. And I realized that I had this connection with the arrow when shooting it without sights, and it just kind of drove me into seeking out a longbow and a recurve and that type of thing. I purchased a used longbow on, I think it was off of Archery Talk or something many years ago, and played with that. Absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, I just could not get enough of it. And I had this drive to just continue to dive deeper and deeper into trad. And I was just, I guess the best way to describe it is hunger. And to just dive in as far as you could. I took a lot of deer, quite a few deer, some small game and stuff with a compound. And some years ago, with that first longbow that I had purchased used, I took my first animal with that, and it happened to be a skunk. I do not recommend that as any animal first, but I did take it. I mean, it was the coolest thing in the world. It was 22 yards away, and I just pinwheeled that thing, and more excitement taking that skunk than the first deer that I ever took with a compound. And there's so much effort and time that you put into shooting a trad bow and becoming proficient with it, that the reward is just there when you are successful with it. So that drove me further and further into trad and trying to find everything that I could gobble up that was traditional. Eventually I decided I need to try to build one of these because I thought I could. And so I built one. It worked, but it wasn't anything, nothing fancy or anything. It was a mild R&D. And it was a shooter. I did take a couple of squirrels with the thing. But that got me I realized I could do it. So then I started playing with designs. And at that time, I was really, really attracted to the curves of the hybrids, or the big R&D bows. And so I thought,
what time frame was this?
I've been building 8 or 9 years. So this is back at the beginning of that. And, the first several years, I just pretty much just played around, built for myself, built for some friends and some family and stuff. And so this is at that time. And at that time, I took this R&D idea in my head and played with some things. I've got this, I guess, natural ability to understand curves and graphs and math and stuff. And so I took these curves that I know about and circles, and I thought, if you put something into motion, the hardest thing to stop is a wheel or a circle, because it's a perfect circle. So what if I implement that into a bow design? So my first R&D, it was actually called the Passion Stick, and it was designed around 3 circles and the cycloid curve. Which the cycloid curve, if you are familiar at all, it's basically if you stuck a pencil on the outside of a wheel and traced it as a car is driving down the road. That curve is basically what became the curve in the Passion Stick, and then later developed into what's now the Swift Stick and the Adventure Stick. But
I am glad that you talked yourself out of going with Passion Stick. That was probably a good call.
Yeah, I know. I got a lot of comments on that. was a mistake on my part for sure.
We're not
But
all natural born marketers, that's for sure.
I guess not. So that was basically it was three circles that were two on the top and one on the bottom, and kind of moving them together to make them into a curve, and seeing where that curve was most efficient. In the designs, I wanted to have a really smooth drawing bow, and so I built several models or several test bows to get to that point, playing with different things, limb cores being the main thing, but length of the bow and all of that. Just playing with different, tweaking different things, getting to where I wanted it to feel right. I never did any real testing until I was happy with the feel, and speed was always secondary to my designs in that. The Swift stick and its little brother, the Adventure stick, which I'll talk about in a little bit, they're both center cut. The shelf is. They both have a radius on it and a low wrist grip. Now, low wrist grip, it's a locator, but that low wrist puts your hand into a position that you are pushing directly through the center of the tiller, which is really important when you start talking about the shootability of a bow and getting the most out of it, and yet maintaining quiet and vibration-free shooting.
So when you say that, Eric, when you say that it's for your bow, it's not necessarily for every design, right? I don't want to make sure people don't run out and start digging in with their heels. Not every bowyer will tiller to that point. Is that correct? So this is part of your design.
No, that's
correct.
Okay. So this is part of my design. I mean, there's a pivot point in all bows, though, that you should be pushing through.
That's right.
And that's at the center of the tiller. The center of the tiller is different on my different designs. Okay, so yeah, it was really important to build a extremely smooth drawing bow. That was kind of the number one priority with this. Speed was secondary in the design, but it is quite fast as well.
Yeah, when I tested this, I think it was Josh that brought us together, Josh Miller. Mm-hmm. And when I tested this, I think I kept it. The Swift stick was his, and I kept it like 8 weeks longer than he wanted me to, because the first time I ran it through the draw force, it's the smoothest. I have the numbers. It's the smoothest draw force that I've tested in a R&D longbow. And this is a change per inch graph, which just represents for every inch that you draw the amount of poundage you pick up. And you can actually see where most people, because we're teaching people how to read these too. If you're a 28-inch draw, what you're going to do is you're going to feel this bow get really soft as you come into your anchor. And as you expand into that 28, 29, that little dip that you see there, where it's actually softer, is money in terms of comfort and ergonomics. And then you can see even for the longer draw guys, because I think Josh is a 30, 31 inch draw. Yep. So when a long draw guy tells you it's comfortable, it is. You can see you never exceed 2.4 pounds inch per inch. So that's a really smooth bow, and that's what first caught my attention with your design. It's almost a signature within your design.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's extremely smooth, and it's got speed to back it up as well, which is not always the case when you have a really smooth bow.
Yeah, it's interesting, because you're right. There's a trade-off that you're usually balancing. And I have the Swift here coming in at 173 at 10 grains per pound, and then a 171 at 11, and 165 at 12. And I think that's, the second or third fastest R&D. It's probably the third, because the Whip and PL are right there next to one another. So to be that smooth and to come in with that type of performance, it's a really, really, really great design.
It's basically a small version of the Swift stick. It's its little brother. It's 60 inches long instead of 64, and it kind of filled that need for the guys that struggled to shoot a 64 out of a blind, or even wanted a shorter bow shoot out of a tree stand. I'm weird and I can shoot a 68-inch ASL out of a blind, but most guys do prefer a shorter bow. With this, I mean, it's identical to the Swift as far as its limb cores, its riser, all that. It's just shorter, but it gives you exceptional smoothness, and it adds a little bit of speed actually.
It's actually pretty impressive because you
Yep.
have a 64 versus a 60-inch bow, and they're both. I mean, I guess that we try to line that. That's what it would look like lined up. They're both very comparable
Yep.
to one another, and it's really impressive to see that losing 4 inches, and you can see the slight change there as you get into.
Right.
You can see that what was at 30 and 31 inches is now at 27 and 20 or 28 inches. Just out of curiosity, did you just take the exact design? This is your personal adventure, I believe. Did you take the exact
Yes, it
design
is.
from the Swift and just make a miniature version, or are there differences in cores or feel? Is a person going to be able to pick this up back and forth between the Swift, and is it going to feel very similar other than just the slight ergonomics?
Yeah, no, it'll feel really similar. It's based entirely on the Swift design. So
Okay.
back when I was building the Passion Stick years back, I built myself a 59-inch version, and that bow was so super smooth and so fast that I mean that was my go-to bow at the time, and I thought about that as I was trying to fill this void for a short bow. And so I went back, I built a couple of test bows in this in a 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, and a 61, just to kind of find where it felt best. And I've always judged speed just by the naked eye. I mean, I do have a chronograph, and so I can test, when I'm done with the design. But the 60-inch fit the mold the best, and to me felt the best. Probably partially because I've got a 27 and a half, 28-inch draw, and so for me this thing kind of hits a wall right there, and so I'm hitting kind of peak performance out of it at full draw.
Right.
And but yet even beyond my full draw back to 31, I've got a guy that has a 30 and a half inch draw and shoots this thing and absolutely loves it.
Yeah, if you look, because this is always a point of discussion when people are talking about bows and the trade-offs, going from 64 inches to 60 inches. If you just look at the speed, you're at 173 at 10 grains per pound on the Swift, and you jump to 180 on the Adventure. And that's,
Right.
I'm assuming, just getting rid of mass out on the ends, right? Getting those shorter limbs, and you're picking up some efficiency.
So I think a lot of people don't understand that speed comes from the working portion of the limb, or how much working portion of the limb that you have. I mean, I could build a bow that shoots 190 feet a second that's 80 inches long if I made the riser 90% of the bow, and the limbs not working for it. It would look very funny. But the working portion of the limb is what allows that extra speed, because you're shortening that off of the 64-inch design to get to 60.
That's a great explanation. And we can see it show up here in the Adventure Stick and at 180 at 10 grains per pound, where the Swift was 173. And if you just jump to 12 grains per pound, which is, you always see on a heavier arrow, you see the more efficient bows really start to walk away across the board. And it's 165 for the Swift and the 171 for the little Adventure. And I think when I tested this, I told you, I'm like, this thing is, I could feel that it was faster because speed's the last thing I do. And in shooting it, there was a practical feel of the speed. And this graph has me eating crow because I'm getting pretty confident as Trad Lab, and sometimes my mouth certainly outweighs my capability. And I think I was texting him like, you're really making mistakes sending all of your bows with B55. It's going to slow you down. And I'm glad you're not listening to me, because I did the speeds to show you how much you were losing, and I loaded them in this graph. I'm like, my God, it's not near the effect that I thought it would be. So what you're looking at here is B55s at 177, D97 14 strand, and I believe it's a triple T string, so a very well made string is at 180, and you're only seeing 2 feet per second difference at 11. And then just like everything else, when the arrow gets heavier, everything starts showing up. 166 and 171, you see the gap. And I want to make this point because this is on a 60-inch bow. If you're shooting a 68-inch bow, the variances will get larger because there's more string material. But I was very, very surprised at this. Definitely eating crow, and which I don't mind. I actually love being wrong and learning. So this was eye-opening for me. And the shot, you send all your bows with B55, but I want to point out that they are fast flight capable. But you do that because of the feel, right? You believe that they make the bow feel softer, and I actually buy into that now. I didn't before, but after getting your bows, I notice, especially on the Minnesota, it's just a soft shooter. What made you kind of land on that?
Yeah, so as we get more into the other designs, you'll find that I'm a hill guy. I'm a shoot ASLs 99% of the time. That's all I hunt with anymore. And extremely traditional in that. Part of it was that. Part of it is that I designed all of my bows on feel, and so when I send them out, I want them to go with the string that gave me the feel that I designed it with, and so people do feel that it is a softer feel. And I will say that when a B55 string is not shot in, it will be exceptionally slow, and it'll stretch like crazy. I mean, I think you can probably get almost 2 inches of stretch out of a B55 string initially. It's pretty crazy, but once that string is shot in, it does perform well, and you still have that softer feel, which I like. I do shoot both. I've got some D97 on a few bows, and I've got B55 on some others, and I can go back and forth between both of them. But to me, the B55 just gives that feel that I was going for when I designed it, and so I want everybody to experience that.
Yeah, I was I was really surprised and impressed with it. I think I told you we were outside shooting, and I left it outside. It was near 100 degrees that day and really high humidity in Kansas. And I think when I came in, I had like a 5-inch brace sight. So it's I don't want everyone to run out and go buy 55 and then nail my email that it stretches. It definitely stretches. It's something you have to pay attention to. But if you're shooting to like groove in your shot, it's such a pleasant material to shoot because it softens the shot. So now we're moving into the Minnesota stick, which is actually, and you can tell by the limb profile here, is what you would refer to as a mild R&D. And longbows are confusing because people say, "Oh, I want to shoot a longbow," and there's several variants. There's the R&D, which you saw those curves on the Swift and the Adventure. There's this mild R&D, which is a softer curve, and then there's ASLs, which are straight limbs. This is a mild R&D that you build that I personally love shooting. Tell me why a customer would choose a mild R&D over an R&D.
Some guys are going to be like, well, I want to shoot an ASL, but I can't, so I'm going to shoot a mild R&D. Some guys are going to say that it's more forgiving than the full-blown R&D or hybrid. And some guys will say that it's more accurate because of the long, not straight, but longer limbs. And there's also, in this design anyway, it's a much larger riser, so you have more mass weight in the center. The Swift stick is the Adventure. The riser is just over 13 inches, where this is almost 17 inches fade to fade, and so you end up with a lot of mass there to keep you stable.
Trying to give people an idea of that, like there's an iPhone next to the riser of this thing, so it does have a lot. Mine's Osage, so it is really, really putting the weight right in the middle of the bow.
Yeah, absolutely. And since you talked about the weight there, one thing that I really encourage people is I've got a number of woods that I use for risers. There's all sorts of them on my website, but I always encourage people to pick a riser wood that, or combination of riser woods that ends up over 50 cubic foot or cubic feet per pound.
Give us some examples of types.
Sure.
Of
okay, so Osage is the standard on the Swift stick, or no, on the Adventure stick, the Minnesota stick, American stick, and the Northern stick, and then I have Purple Heart as the standard on the Swift and the Adventure. Both of those woods come in just over 50 pounds. I believe Osage is 53, if I remember right. But let's take a really heavy wood like Macassar ebony is, what is that? 79 cubic feet per pound. So you add a ton of mass. I've done a few bows out of solid G10 for a riser, and that stuff is 112 cubic feet per pound. So it's really, really heavy. It actually, on a Swift stick, it adds, I think it's almost a third or 30% weight increase on the full bow.
Have you tested Dymelux yet?
I have. Yep. That's just slightly less weight than G10, but it is a very, very nice heavy wood, and I've done quite a few bows with that.
All right, Eric, take us through the design of the Minnesota stick and how you kind of landed on
it. All right. So I went back to the first bow that I ever designed was a mild R&D, and that bow was not this bow, obviously, but that's what I kind of went back to and started tweaking some stuff, completely changed it. But that's what started my walk into designing the mild R&D. This one is, like I said, it has a really large, heavy riser. It's got a slightly longer upper limb than lower limb, which helps put your pressure pushing directly through the center of the tiller of the bow, and then throws your arrow really, really close to the actual center of the bow, which helps with efficiencies and quietness and speeds, things like that. The bow is really quiet. It's super, super smooth, which was what I was going for. The initial designs, it was kind of slow, so I added this 6-inch tip wedge. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not.
Yeah, no, I did.
You can see the all the way down 6 full inches, which makes the end of the bow static. Creates kind of a whipping action, which added a little bit of speed. The 64-inch kind of was a nice round number that was great for hunting, and it could also be shot as a target bow. But because I'm a hunter primarily, all of my everything that I do is built around the idea that somebody's going to hunt with these bows, and so that was kind of what I was going for with that.
So I have the draw force curve up. I popped it up whenever we were discussing how smooth it was, and you can actually see it here. Around 25 inches, it starts to climb, and what you really see with a mild versus an R&D is you just start to see a more linear draw force curve, and you'll watch through the evolution of these designs. Like if we go into the ASLs next, it's even more linear, and you start seeing this linear climb. So with this one at 25, you go 2.4, 2.5, around 28 inches, you get 2.8, and then you get that nice soft, I don't know if this is just happy accidents, but you get this nice soft 2.2 right into your expansion point for me at 28 inches. And then it jumps up to 2.9, but you never really exceed 3 pounds of stack, which is really good out of a mild R&D bow. And the performance, if I take this bow compared to your barn burner, which is your, I guess it would be your Swift and Adventure, this bow being 64 would be better to compare it to your Swift. You're losing 10 feet per second at 12 grains per pound. So that's the trade-off, 10 feet per second. But there is a noticeable difference in the feel and how soft it is. It's a little bit more linear.
Yeah, so with the draw force curve, I mean, the whole goal was to be smooth and be soft and have that incredible shooting experience. Kind of goes with all the designs. That was my number one priority, but this one fell in really well.
your ASL lineup that we're getting into now, which is something I'm excited about. This is the American stick. You walk us through the origin of this design and the iterative nature of this design that led you to this final bow.
This is my baby. I am a kind of old fashioned, really traditional guy. I absolutely love shooting ASL. Hunt with it. I shoot with it. I shoot probably 100 arrows a day with an ASL, and just absolutely love it. I don't know, there's something magic about it that you don't. I don't know. I don't want to say you don't get it with other bows, but anybody who's ever picked up an ASL and has been successful hunting with it, or just watching that arrow fly, it's magic. I don't know how else to describe it. And there's just this pureness that comes with it. Not to mention, I think everybody wants to be Howard Hill, so that helps. But so I don't know if I've ever told you this part of the story, but back when several years back, there was a Bowyer out of Michigan. He was little known. His name was Maurice Cash. He had passed away, and his daughters and wife, I believe, were selling all of the bows that he had in stock to help pay for some stuff. I bought one and could not figure out how to shoot it for a while. And I had, when I did figure out how to shoot it, I mean, I spent some time with it because I wanted to be Howard Hill. I wanted to shoot like Howard Hill. When I figured that out and figured out that how to hold it, how to shoot it, I literally could not put it down. And so I thought, I have to build one of these. I have to figure out how to build it. And so that led me on this long journey of design and lots of firewood bows, which is what I call a bow that I have to throw away because the design wasn't right.
How many, when you say lots and lots, tell folks how many you actually went through, because this really speaks to the level of grit and determination you have.
So on paper, I have 63 of them that I built as test bows, tweaked, and got close to the final design on. I still tweaked probably the next 20 or 30 bows after that as well, just little more visual things than anything. But there's been little tweaks to the design that through the years. I think maybe I said it before, but as a Bowyer, well, in traditional archery, I think everybody is constantly in pursuit of perfection, whether that's through shooting, whether it's through building. I mean, if you have an arrow that doesn't fly right, you want to shoot another one so you can get that thing. You want to see that perfect arrow flight. Same thing with building. I want to get that perfect bow, and nobody's perfect, and so you're constantly pursuing that.
Right.
And so that drove me to build design after design after design, or test bow after test bow, till I got what I wanted. And there was a lot of tweaks. Initially, I started with the riser, how large the riser should be. There isn't much of a riser on an ASL anyway. I mean, no. It's pretty small, but the size of that, the length of the limbs, which comes along with how long the riser is. What to do with the tips, what to do with the taper of the limb, how thick the limbs should be. And then the really intricate part is the limb core, and how to get the most performance and the best feel out of a bow that's really a straight stick, with a handle on it.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting people to see. Is you hold it strong there, and of course mine's not. That is literally a straight limb. Mm-hmm. There are some, and you can obviously walk us through this better than I, but there's a string follow version of ASL, which this has a slight string follow where the limb tip kind of points back toward the archer. There's a back set which goes this way. The string follow is obviously for smoother designs, and then the back set for a little bit more speed. But there is no R&D to this. This is a true hill style bow.
Yeah, that's right. So the string follow on this will be somewhere around probably 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. It isn't very much. And that does gives you smoothness, but I've been able to get exceptional speed for an ASL out of a string follow design, which there isn't supposed to be, and that is because of the way. Well, there's multiple reasons, but probably the largest reason is the limb cores. And
That's a good segue for me to talk about speed. So this thing comes in at 10 grains per pound at 165, then at 11 at 161, and then at 12 at 154. So literally 154 is just 2 feet per second under the Minnesota stick. So, and that's very uncommon for an ASL, for a straight limb bow to be that close to a mild R&D. Typically for those, because a lot of people don't, haven't kind of traversed the entire spectrum of longbows. The more curve you have, the more speed you have. This thing with straight limbs butts right up against mild R&Ds. And that's kind of what makes it stand out. And it does a great job of handling that speed, even as you get into the longer or the heavier arrows with a 68-inch bow, which is just really outstanding. The American stick delivers that speed at 68 inches while still maintaining a really good ergonomic draw force. Here's the change per inch again. And as I said, as you go to straighter limbs, you see a more linear and linear shift. And I think it's pretty common for people to run 68 and 70 inches on ASL. There's a good reason why, because if this were 68 inches, we would be exceeding 3 pounds per inch, which is typically where people would define this as a bow that stacks. And this bow does a very good job because ASLs tend to be tighter in the back than mild R&D or R&D. 28 inches, you're at 2.4. We see that bump at 29 at 2.9, and then to 3.1. For me, a 28-inch draw, that gives me a bit of a wall to go into. It actually helps me shoot. I actually will adjust my brace to move that right behind my draw length, so it gives me a nice little resistance as I break the shot. So even though it's showing great speed, it also presents itself well for ergonomics. And I'll have an ASL comparison where I have a bunch of them here. And if you were to overlay this thing would be at the top of it, near the top or at the top of the pile for sure. Can you walk us through the design that got you to this level of metric?
And people look at this and they think, wow, it's a straight bow. It's got a riser in it, and that's about it. Really simple. Quite honestly, it's the most complicated design that I've got. There's there's some things within this that create some efficiencies, and to get that speed that some others don't, within the cores, and it's all based on the design. But if you were to draw this to full draw, you'd see this perfect arc, which would you continue into a circle on the upper limb and the lower limb. And that upper circle, the bottom of it, would come in line with the center of this grip, which is actually where the center of the tiller is right in the dead center of this. The lower circle would come in line with the shell. What that does,
that's interesting.
In order to do that, I had to build the upper limb 2 inches longer than the lower limb. And then that created a huge timing issue. And so we had to actually go to the lower limb had to be thinner than the upper limb. So the upper limb is basically stronger than the lower limb, and create that perfect limb timing. And that's how limb timing on this. You can tweak it with your dock height, with your finger pressures and stuff like that. But limb timing on this is how I'm able to get such a quiet and nearly dead in the hand ASL, which is somewhat uncommon. But it also creates efficiencies and basically transfers more energy from the string and the bow limbs into the arrow, and you get this beautiful hard shooting or beautiful powerful cast that arrow follows. But talking about the center of the tiller, I'll go into that just a little bit, because this kind of goes, I talked a little bit about it on the Swift, I believe, but on this it's really easy to see because the center of the tiller is right into the center of the grip, and most people are going to try to shoot an ASL, or if you haven't shot an ASL anyway, are going to try to grip this like you do an R&D or a recurve, and they're going to try to put all this pressure in the web of their hand,
Right.
up here. Don't do that. You'll lose your teeth. I mean, it's you will feel every vibration in the world. What you should do is all of your pressure should go directly through the center of this grip. People call it heel down, is kind of a really common term. And basically you're pushing on the center of the tiller. And when you do that, that bow shoots phenomenal. It shoots quiet, and for an ASL, shoots quite fast.
Yeah, I wish more people would. Everyone's tried them and like, oh, it makes your teeth rattle. I wish more people would give it another shot with that lower grip. And I know, can you hold yours up to show people the different grip styles? This is a more traditional hill style straight grip. Is that correct? Can you walk us through the offerings that you have? Because I have a modified one here.
This is a straight grip. I'll try to get close here without getting into the sun. This is a straight grip. I do offer a disc grip, which has it's basically cuts into the riser just slightly. This really,
right.
Kind of a curve. And then I have done a few locator grips on these for guys. I know you have one on yours now. Paul had modified that for you. I discourage it to a lot of people because it does promote the ease of putting your grip pressure in the wrong position for somebody who's inexperienced. If you know what you're doing, it's not an issue at all, and it does help with consistent hand placement.
And you're saying incorrect is putting the pressure here. You're wanting
Correct.
people to put the pressure here. And the dish just helps with the consistency. So let's summarize the grips. Show us a straight grip again.
All right. So here's a straight.
Perfectly straight. Can you kind of point it toward them so they can see? It's just a narrow face that's hitting them the other way.
Yeah. So this is this way.
There you go. Look how narrow that is. So that's a straight edge that your hand goes into.
Yep. And one thing that I do, there is a really, really slight flat spot here. It's rounded out so you don't really feel that it's flat. But what that does is when you're pushing on the center of the tiller, it also forces you to push down the vertical center line of the bow, reducing the possibility of torque.
No, yeah, and you can feel it when you shoot it. That's you're giving away all your dirty secrets. But I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that. But you can feel that when you shoot this next to other ASLs. So there's a straight grip, because this can be really when you step into the AS world, it's really confusing. There's a straight grip. There's a reverse grip, which we're going to talk about in your next model. There's this was Paul McCard modified, and this is what you would call a dish grip, right?
Nope, that would be called a locator grip.
A locator grip.
Yep, a disc grip would be just I wish I had one out here, but it basically takes a C, a really, really slight C out of the
I got you.
Length grip. The deepest part would be right in the center, and the deepest part is like a quarter of an inch from the outside, so it's very, very slight.
Gotcha. So it would just be, it's similar to this, except it doesn't go the full length of the grip. It would stop here and just give you a bump to kind of to index, correct?
Somewhat, yeah. It's just the curve runs the full length of the grip, and
Gotcha.
The deepest part is at the center of the grip.
No, you're absolutely right. And this bow, all ASLs will shoot better when you put the pressure down here versus up here. And two different animals live in this bow. If you're fighting it from here, it's going to hurt you. If you shoot it from here, there's something very sweet that occurs in ASL. But I think it's good so people know, and they'll give them a chance. Are there pictures of your different grip styles on your website?
Yes, I do believe that I have all of them on there now. I don't. If I don't, I will very soon. I know there's a disc grip on there. I don't know if I have a locator on there or not, but
okay. And there's definitely a reverse handle, which we'll get into next. And at one time, because I know people will be confused, you did offer takedown versions, but you no longer offer the takedown version because of the just time invested. Right? Yeah.
I just don't have the time. It's it's a nice thing to have. There's a strong socket. It took up too much time in the piece that I have in my shop. didn't didn't allow me to take the time to do it, basically.
Right. And if people want to see, you do have a pro shooter, and I don't want to have pro shooters on here with the Bowyer, but if you want to see the 5-minute mile ran with an ASL, meaning if you want to see what can actually be done with this, Josh Miller is a great example. He has videos. It's a Stickman Archery on YouTube, and I'll put a link here so people can see him shooting this bow, because I do think that's powerful, because a lot of people have never seen a bow shot like that. And I'll be honest with you, Eric, my job as TradLab is to be good at predicting. And I develop all these metrics and I do all these tests, and it's a lot of work. But the end goal is, if I can't predict a bow to be the best and it's not the best, then I'm really wasting everybody's time.
Right. Yep.
Paul McCarg is he shot for World Archery and represented our country in France. You know, a top 3% shooter. When he's competing, he has a big R&D longbow, but whenever he's hunting, he's an ASL guy. And I told him about this bow and the test, and he bought one, and I was nervous. I was just biting my nails. And when he called me back, he's like, best ASL I've ever shot. And this is a guy that's very picky about his bow. And I was like, yes, I can predict it. And if I can predict it, I'm on the right track. But this is definitely at the top, if not the top, right at first or second. I've got to determine with the numbers, but this is definitely a top performer, top in ergonomics, and it's kind of a signature. And I don't want to go too crazy as a personal fanboy of yours, but you do find a really good balance of optimal, and that's hard to find in a Bowyer. But the good Bowyers are always in the center of speed, performance, sound, and ergonomics. And you have found a good center there, and you carry that into the ASL. And I'm really proud of this bow, and that we have a young Bowyer that can hopefully be producing these for quite a while. This is definitely your baby, and it shows whenever I shoot it, because it's a standout. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying
that. You know, it's something special.
Okay, now we're moving into another ASL in your lineup, which is a reverse hand. We talked a little bit about grips during the American. This is the reverse handle of your version of the reverse handle in ASL. Can you walk us through the Northern Stick design?
Yeah. So had a lot of people asking about a reverse handle because of its forgiveness. There's an incredible amount of forgiveness when it comes to when you put the riser on the other side, because you're pushing directly on the back of the limbs. It's really hard to turn something when you're right on it. And so my design it's basically a backwards American stick. Exact same riser. I even kept the riser shape, which there's a lot of reverse handles out there that went to kind of a rounded look. I personally did not care for that, but I really loved the look of the American stick riser and that shape, and the way that the fades ramp up. So I thought, well, what if I just keep that? And the American stick is such a performer that I tried to find a way to keep those limb core designs, and that to be able to get the most out of the reverse handle, and be able to be forgiving yet maintain some speeds and feel. So that's what I did. Basically, moved the riser to the other side of the bow. The riser, the block is the same. It is shaped different in the finished bow, as far as like how skinny it gets out here, and then the handle shape and everything. The limb cores are in reverse order of the American stick. Some people probably don't think that matters, but back into the American stick here for a second. In testing that, I found that the way that I stacked the parallels and the tapers in the core made a difference in feel. I don't know if it made a difference in performance. I never did chrono anything with that, but the way that I had them stacked did make a difference in feel. And so in order to continue that feel in this, I had to basically put them in backwards of the American. And it's got a straight it's got a straight grip that you basically, again, you're pushing right on the limbs, which I'm gonna try to get in frame here.
There you go.
So if you think about this, it's really, since you're pushing right on the limb, it's really, really hard to torque that. Okay. When I first shot this, when I was testing it, I made a quick video, and I think the first few shots I was fairly surprised. I described it as cheating because it's like nearly impossible. I had to like actually grab like this in order to get that bow to turn. When I was, go from loose to really wrenching on it to get it to turn, because it's so forgiving that way. Now, if you think about that versus the American, where the grip is in here and away from the limbs,
right,
it's much easier,
right,
to get that to turn.
It's like the overdraws of the 90s on compounds. It makes it more critical when you're not under the pivot point of the arrow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, so I had got that. I got the forgiveness out of it that I wanted. I got the look that I wanted. I got the limb feel that I wanted. What in doing this, there was some really interesting things that I learned, or I guess I knew, but really proved to myself, was by putting the riser on the other side, you're basically making a longer bow. Because effectively you're drawing this. Well, okay, the riser is 1.5 inches thick when built. And so by moving that to the other side, you're effectively drawing this 1.5 inches less. So a 68-inch northern stick is basically the same as shooting a 69.5-inch American stick. So if you were to have a draw force curve, it's going to be incredibly smooth all the way back.
Right.
I think I put this on a scale here at the shop and didn't exceed 3 pounds until I got to like 34 inches or something. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. And so
the user mods that. To interrupt you real fast, as the user, do we run a higher brace height on this versus the American?
Yes, very good point. Because that riser's on the other side, it does give you it does require a higher brace height. This is a 68 inch is 7 1/4 versus a 68-inch American is 6 3/8. And so you've got that also, it plays into forgivability too, because now you've got more clearance for your fletchings to clear around the shelf as well. It's kind of a good transition for guys that maybe are, a mild R&D guy that wants to shoot ASL, but doesn't want to go to the hill style or the regular ASL. This is a good transition.
What's your price points, real fast, before we close on your lineup?
So it's $750 all the way across on all the longbows is the base. That's either Osage or Purple Heart for the riser, and then choice of colored glass, bamboo cores on everything. And then you can, I've got a wide array of veneer options and riser options that, that can change that price point if you want to get into something, fancy and really appealing aesthetically.
And all of my bows from you are Osage with green glass on one side and gray on the other. That's your baseline bow, right? It's not,
yep.
So if people want a bow in that picture, that's my bow. That's a $750 bow new. Same with all your other lineup. And I think that presents, I just finished a podcast today with Aaron where I said, every bowyer sells $1,100 and $1,400 bows, but very few bowyers make them. I actually think you're making them and offering at lower prices. I tried to talk you into raising prices at one point. You turned me down, but this lineup, the reason why I do sound like a big fan, I have no relationship with you. We rarely talk. We've talked more in the last 2 days recording this than we have since I started studying. It's the relationship with what your bows are doing in the metrics and the price point that you're presenting to the public. I think they offer a lot of value, and I really do appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The price, I've always wanted to maintain the ability or be reachable by a working guy, and be able to put a bow in the hands of a guy that works at the factory down the road. That's because I'm a hunter, they're a hunter. I think we all have the same goals. So.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Coming out here and sharing your designs and not being afraid to put the measure to them is great. Shows your confidence in your product.